When you're designing your own tabletop role-playing game, there are a number of ways to handle character advancement. And in today's video, I'm not going to go and show all the different ways tons of different tabletop role-playing games have handled advancement, but instead, look at what I consider to be the three primary approaches that you can take at a core level when designing advancement for your game. Hi, I'm Peter, creator and lead designer of Tales from Elsewhere, and I've been playing tabletop role-playing games for over 25 years now. And this YouTube channel acts as a place for me to share my design philosophies that I think will help us all become better designers. It also acts as a sort of dev blog for the creation of my Tales from Elsewhere product. It's a series of action horror tabletop role-playing games, the first of which, Clockworld, a post-apocalyptic Weird West game, is live on Kickstarter right now. There will be a link down below if you want to check out what I've produced from all my years of experience. That aside, let's hop into today's lesson. So when we're talking about advancement systems, we're talking about how the player characters in a tabletop role-playing game grow and evolve over time. And there are three different ways that you generally see this growth occur. And as always, these aren't better or worse than each other. They're different and they serve different purposes. So let me walk you through how I personally categorize advancement systems. So on a graph, we have power, and we have breadth. And what I mean by both of these is the power of a character can grow. They become more numerically effective, their stats go up, their bonuses go up, their damage goes up. That's an increase in power. An increase in breadth makes the character more versatile. It lets them do more things. They get access to more tools or solutions to help them solve problems. And you'll often see this as like new spells or abilities or feats. And both of these can play into different types of fantasy and a different way of feeling like your character is growing. When a character's power is the primary thing that increases over time in gameplay, I call this vertical progression. This means that the characters are not going to grow as much in options over time, but more likely they're going to just get stronger at doing the things that they're doing. They're going to get better at swinging their sword or have more hit points or become more tanky. And you see vertical progression often used for martial characters in classic tabletop role-playing games. A great example would be the 5th edition fighter as a base class. They gain feats over time, sure, but the feats in 5th edition don't actually open up a ton of different playstyle options after your first one or two. So the fighter is overall a vertical progressing character. They get more attacks per turn, per attack action, their proficiency bonus goes up, their hit points go up, they get more uses of the things that they have from an early level, like more action surges, more second winds, and their second wind heals them more. This is classic vertical progression. They become more numerically interesting without a huge increase in breadth over time. Now, when character progression is primarily just gaining new abilities, their starting power doesn't necessarily change as much, and instead they grow more varied over time. You'll find this sometimes in classless games, like my game Tales from Elsewhere, and this is where the characters are just gaining new options, but their numbers don't really go up. Now, this tends to keep characters a little bit more grounded, right? Their power fantasy doesn't scale as much when you're doing a horizontal progression, as I call it. And this is where you become more interesting over time, but not necessarily numerically superior. And I'll come back to the utility of this a little later in the video. Now, most games as a whole don't really fall purely into vertical or horizontal. Most games honestly use what I call diagonal progression, where the character is growing numerically over time and gaining more options. A good example of that would be like the 5th edition sorcerer, something like spellcasters in games whose spells become more powerful over time, like their spell save DC goes up, their spell attack bonus increases, the power of the spells they can cast increases over time, and they can cast more of them. All of those things are very vertical in their progression. But they also get access to new types of spells. They get more things they get to do. They become more varied and versatile as they grow in power as well, making them very much a diagonal progression. They get more things, and they grow more numerically superior. Another example of a diagonal progression that I found really evocative is actually from the game Goblins that The Ugly Goblin, YouTuber, we'll put a link down to his channel below for those that may not be familiar, is working on. And now this is still very much in kind of an early alpha stage, so forgive some of the early stage things, but what he's doing for his game is a talent tree. And I love talent trees. I'm a big Path of Exile fan, and so I see a talent grid like this and I get really excited. And what this talent tree creates as a form of diagonal progression is you control how much you are growing in breadth versus power based on how you invest in the tree. As every time you advance, you choose where to place your points along this grid, and you have to connect to pick something else along the path. And for you to grow numerically, to grow in power, you need to invest more points in a single node. Like if you want to keep pumping up your health, you have to keep putting points into the health node. But doing so means you're not spending things to advance toward the adrenaline and rage and frenzy nodes, which actually give you new abilities. So you're choosing how you advance through the tree and basing your build off of how much you'd like to broaden your options versus, invest heavily in just one or two features. And that means that you could make yourself more vertical or horizontal depending on how you'd like to build your character. And I find these really fun, and they make my brain juices, churn pleasantly because I'm a big ARPG fan as well. And what I really like that The Ugly Goblin did is he did the proper color coding, where red is strength-based things, green is more dex-based things, and blue is magic. That's the proper color coding there. But I find this sort of diagonal progression to be very engaging because you have agency over how vertical or how horizontal, right, you'd like to tilt your graph. So why use one over the other? Well, what are the benefits of any of these? Well, so vertical progression is when you want the player characters to feel like they're growing in intensity, where they start off as, a simple farmer who picked up their rusty sword, and over the course of a game, they become more powerful and more powerful. They cultivate power, and eventually they're slaying dragons or even gods. And that story of growth can be very engaging to players, where they start off, rags to riches, right, when it comes to power, where they want to see themselves grow and face more powerful foes over time, even if the underlying math of your game under the hood means that they're kept at parity with appropriately level challenge monsters. The feeling of fighting more powerful things will make them fulfill that sort of power fantasy idea. Horizontal progression is when you want the characters to feel like they can be better prepared for various situations, but you never want them to become numerically superior to anything that they encounter. This is better for grounded games where a player at level 1 and level 10, however that's conceptualized in your game, isn't that much of a difference from a numbers standpoint. What's really great about horizontal progression is that a player or a party can face almost any monster in your monster manual because there isn't a level disparity between them. That it's more about how prepared and versatile the players become rather than turning any monster in your list of threats into something that's irrelevant. And that's why I did this for the Tales from Elsewhere system that I've built. That's because I wanted the players to be grounded people of the world. This is action horror, and they need to always feel vulnerable and like they, may not see the next sunrise. So over time, the characters get to pick new edges as they advance, but their skill bonuses and the number of injuries they can take don't actually increase over time. Instead, they just start picking new options like Bloodlust or Lead by Example or the Moonshiner Crafting Edge. Just all sorts of options that are available to them that they can start branching out into new features. Now, when a character is first created in a Tales from Elsewhere game, they're limited as to what edges they can take based on their backstory elements. If they want to take supernatural edges, they have to have something in their backstory that let them touch the strange and the weird, like they need to have seen a vision or been part of a cult. Similarly, to have an assassin edge, they need to have been part of some sort of nefarious profession, like being an outlaw or something. While being somebody that can get access to interaction edges like Lead by Example might mean they need to be a local politician or a lawman, somebody who's used to talking to people and interacting with them. But once they've gone past character creation and start advancing in the game, they're free to pick from any of these options. And now, the synergies that different edges create does represent a power increase, as you can start stacking interacting pieces to create a gestalt that's more powerful than you were before. But numerically, a zombie is always going to be the same level of threat to the player, which means you can always use them. The players can never ignore those zombies as they play. And that's the real value of going for a more horizontal progression over one that's more vertical. You end up being able to leverage a larger amount of the available monsters and threats in your game because they'll never be outgrown. But of course, the drawback of that is the players never outgrow threats, so they never feel like they've grown to surpass the world. So if that's not a design goal of your game, if you're doing something more heroic, you'd want to avoid being too horizontal in your development. However, I think one of the happy medium, as always in game design, is that diagonal in the middle. That, yeah, players can become more numerically powerful in games, but I think what's most exciting for a player on advancement is when they get a new toy, when they get to try something new and get excited that they have a new spell they can cast or a new combat maneuver they can leverage, right? Where they couldn't do something before and now they can. And that's something the players can look forward to. If all they have to look forward to as they advance is numbers go up, that makes advancement less exciting for them. Yeah, it's useful to get more hit points and deal more damage, but it's way more engaging and evocative for the players if, as they advance, their character becomes more interesting and exciting to play. So if your game is primarily vertical, I really recommend that you allow some amount of fun new toys to be added over time. They don't even have to be that powerful, but it's about the players feeling like they're growing in breadth over time. That creates, I think, a more engaging experience, whether or not it's coupled with that vertical side or not. As always, thank you so much for watching that video, and if you enjoyed that, consider hitting like and subscribe or checking out our Kickstarter campaign. We're currently looking for funding to complete the full-color, hardcover, gorgeous rulebook for Tales from Elsewhere Clockworld, our post-apocalyptic Weird West game. So there'll be a link down below. Consider checking it out and supporting us. It means the world. All right, I'll catch you here next week on Tales from Elsewhere.